What is up, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of the Squares and Circles podcast. How are we doing this week? I've had a really good week. Not that you asked. You can't. I'm filming on my own. But anyway, I've had a really good week. I've been quite productive. I got a job. I've changed my hair. I've bleached my eyebrows. And that's actually crazy because I have been blonde for the past year and a half. And I used to change my hair colour like every other month maximum. I would change it all the time, and I haven't changed it in a year and a half, so to change it now, I'm so gassed. It feels so good to be back. I love change, well, when it comes to my hair anyway. Enough about me. Let's get straight into the episode, and today we're going to be talking about the feeling of being overwhelmed with life choices, because we've all been there, I'm sure, and if you haven't, you're a lucky sod. We've all heard so many times before that the world is our oyster, but do you ever feel like maybe the oyster has too much to offer? It has too many pearls and it's too big. Maybe you're like me and so many of these pearls or options, if we're not being metaphorical, sound appealing and like routes we might want to go down. There's a trend on TikTok at the moment where people are talking about their fig trees, where each fig represents a different avenue of life that they would like to explore. But they're usually quite contrasting, and we simply just don't have enough time to try out everything and give it our all. This fig tree analogy comes from Sylvia Plath's book, The Bell Jar, which I haven't actually read yet, but from the quotes that I've seen from it, I definitely want to. It sounds really good, because the way that she talks about it is just so beautiful, and I'll leave an article about the book and all of the quotes at the top of the sources in the description if you want to read more about it, because it's actually so interesting. Or you could just read the book. The quote in question goes like this: I saw my life branching out before me like the green fig tree in the story. From the tip of every branch like a fat purple fig. A wonderful future beckoned and winked. One fig was a husband and a happy home and children. And another fig was a famous poet. And another fig was a brilliant professor. And another fig was E.G., the amazing editor. And another fig was Europe and Africa and South America. And another fig was Constantine and Socrates and Attila, and a pack of other lovers with queer names and offbeat professions. And another fig was an Olympic lady crew champion, and beyond and above all of these figs were many more figs that I couldn't quite make out. So basically the quote is saying that the character in the book just had so many options of careers that she wanted to go down that she just couldn't choose which one. And the trend on TikTok is people posting their fig trees, which is basically a picture of a fig, and on each fig they would write some sort of career option that they would like to go down, and they're also contrasting. It's actually crazy. I've got one on my TikTok if you want to go check that out, Squares and Circles podcast. Also, side note, this is kind of funny, I've been thinking of like trying to get people on to interview and stuff and like just talk about whatever topic of conversation I'm talking about in my podcast, and I thought for this episode it would be really cool to have like Sylvia Plath talk about this with me, considering she wrote the analogy in the first place. I don't really know who she was, so bear that in mind. So I looked her up to find some contact details or something, which I thought would be a long shot, obviously, but it's always worth trying. The worst they'll say is no, or not reply, whatever. But turns out she actually died decades ago, and I did not know that, so no Sylvia Plath today, but we'll honour her memory with today's episode anyway. Rest in peace, Sylvia Plath. You were a beautiful writer, from what I've seen. Anyway, the fact that this whole fig tree thing has become a trend just shows how many of us feel this way, myself included, and I can only assume that you do too if you're listening to this. Usually in part 1 of my episodes I always do some research, give you some facts and figures and stuff, but I didn't really know what to research for this at first, because I feel like we all have our separate reasons for why we want to experience so many career paths and hobbies, and we know what they are, whether it simply be because we're interested in a lot of things, or we want to keep the people in our lives happy, but also be able to do the things we want to do. I also think that a really big factor for this as well is because obviously everything these days is so money orientated, and the majority of the figs on people's trees, that I've seen anyway, have been in creative fields of work, like artists, musicians, and other professions, which are notoriously hard to get into and make enough money from to earn a living. Which is also a huge reason why we might be all struggling to decide what we want to do, because it's not just about deciding what our heart wants and figuring out what we want to do with our lives and dedicate our lives to. It's about deciding between a risky career move where we might end up in a shit financial position but be living in alignment with our true desires, or making a more quote-unquote sensible decision and going down a route that's more stable in terms of money, but it's not so much in terms of our happiness and fulfillment. But regardless of what the reasons behind your desire to experience so many things is, I think that learning how to live with the issue isn't actually about figuring out why we want to do and experience so many things. It's about how to deal with the crippling indecision that accompanies these desires. Especially when it comes to the second half of the quote, the fig tree quote that I mentioned earlier, which says, "I saw myself sitting in the crotch of this fig tree, starving to death, just because I couldn't make up my mind which of the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing all the rest, and as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black, and one by one they plopped to the ground at my feet." So there's an added element of time-pressured stress in this whole thing, which is the last thing we need when dealing with decision paralysis or just struggling to make a decision in general. And so to overcome this issue, we need to learn how to overcome the indecision that occurs in ways that are sustainable for both our lifestyles financially and in terms of our mental health, so that our options don't go stale and pass us by. I've never really known what I want to do. I mean, at every point in my life, I've had an idea of a path I wanted to go down, but throughout the course of my life, these ideas have been kind of pretty drastically different, I would say, from one another. And I really struggled growing up with what subjects to choose for like GCSEs, A-levels, and the degree that I ended up studying was based purely on chance. I will explain that in a little bit. But let's start at the beginning. For my GCSEs, I had no idea at all what I wanted to take, but I was lucky enough to be aware of the fact that I was far too young to know that just yet, or like need to know that just yet. And I chose my GCSEs in year 9. And I think you're like 13 or 14 at that point in your life. So I didn't really feel too much pressure with that. I just kind of chose what I liked because I thought if I choose subjects I enjoy, I'll probably end up figuring out a job from that. Also, side note again, I think it's actually so bizarre that we have to choose our life path so young. I chose Spanish, dance, computer science and art for my GCSEs, which is such a bizarre combination of things, first of all. Especially as I had never done dance before in my life, I just thought it sounded fun. So it was kind of random. But I think that's so understandable for being like 13, 14 and trying to choose what subjects you will need for your future. So I was basically just living on vibes, and obviously I'm not using any of those things right now, apart from like maybe Spanish. But I'm not really using that in terms of my career. I just want to be bilingual, so I'm learning Spanish. So it's not for a job or anything. Anyway, A-levels came around and I thought I had it all figured out. Looking back, it's actually kind of funny and a little bit sad because in GCSEs I really enjoyed biology and I didn't really enjoy art that much because I felt as though my teacher wasn't very nurturing of my creativity and she only seemed to care about technical skills and I wasn't the best at like realism. Which, by the way, I am now a firm believer that you do not need to be good at realism to be an artist. I always had what I thought, and I still kind of think that they're pretty cool and like abstract, kind of, I don't know, like quirky ideas. Like for one of my final projects, I wanted to make like this big wooden box with a spiderweb inside it, and I wanted to paint the box with like journal stuff. And in the spiderweb, I wanted to put loads of things that represented things that had held me back in my life, which I think is a really cool idea, but my teacher was not a fan, so I didn't do that for my final project, but I still to this day think that that's a sick idea. But long story short, she made me feel pretty rubbish about my creativity, and so I thought I wasn't creative because she would just like essentially put me down all the time. And no hate, I don't think she meant to. Like there's obviously a criteria with like GCSEs and stuff, which is a whole different conversation. I'm not getting into that. But like she just wanted me to pass, you know? I don't know. I feel like she could have been a bit more supportive still though, and like worked with me to work around ways that I could use my creativity. You know, I don't know. Anyway, rambling. Let's move on. But yeah, that was the sad part. But the funny part is that this led me to believe that I was more of an academic person than a creative one. So I thought that maybe I would be a forensic psychologist, which is just outrageous because now I've learned a lot about myself and I kind of know who I am. That is just not on my fig tree. I'm such a creative person and I really thrive in expressing myself creatively. Like, sure, I enjoy elements of research and more academic things, but I think as a job, I would be deeply unfulfilled in something non-creative. Anyway, for my A-levels, I chose biology, psychology, and sociology so that I could analyse DNA and catch criminals, I guess. And I was going to go to university to study psychology because then I decided I wanted to be a psychiatrist. And I think I would have actually been good at that, to be fair. And that's why I wanted to do it, because people were telling me that I would be good at it. But I am far too sensitive. I think it would end up affecting my mental health way too much, because I'd be so sad for the people that I'm talking to. And I don't think I'd be able to detach myself. I don't know. All I know is that I'm glad I didn't do it. Anyways, passed all my A-levels, decided I wanted to do a gap year, decided on results day that I didn't want to do a gap year. So I panicked and rung up the University of Brighton, and I got in through clearing, studying psychology. But I wasn't quite sure if that's what I wanted to do still. So I did end up taking that gap year, and oh my god, I'm so glad I did, because in that year I changed my mind so many times on what degree I wanted to do. I mostly switched between like psychology, film and media production. The uni must have hated me because they'd already accepted me, so they can't kick me out for being indecisive. Teehee. To be fair though, I can't actually remember how many times I actually switched my degree with the uni. It was at least like 3 or 4, I think, but I know in my head it was changing constantly. I even wanted to switch to law at one point and become a lawyer, lol. But that's because I was watching the show The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez, who was abused by his parents, and I wanted to somehow help him. I don't know why I thought being a lawyer would solve that, because unfortunately he had already died by the time I was watching the documentary. So I don't really know what I was thinking with that, especially because I hate arguing, and being a lawyer is a professional arguer. So I just don't know what I was thinking with that. I was having a weird week, alright? Anyway, sorry, lots of tangents today. I ended up taking media production purely by chance, as I said, because I wasn't able to switch it anymore, because it was too close to the term start date. But I'm so glad that happened, because I really actually enjoyed my degree, and it taught me so many of the essential skills that I need for podcasting, which is super fun, obviously. And that is obviously what I'm striving towards, so big ups Indecision, and big ups the universe, and big ups Chance. All the people listening called Chance are like, yay, that's me. Big ups, homie. And that's just the bare bones of my journey with my fig tree. And I guess all of that story was mostly about just me figuring myself out and learning who I am and what I like. But now my fig tree is still just as complex and random, arguably more so. I would love to be an interior designer, own an animal sanctuary, be a full-time world explorer, a yoga instructor, a performer doing like pantomimes and stuff like that, a full-time pet man, an artist, own my own crochet business, a drummer in a band, a fashion designer. I love researching stuff, as I said, so I'd also love to research stuff like animal behaviour or like work to conserve animal populations or environments. I'd love to be a filmmaker, a video editor, a librarian, a professional skateboarder, and of course a content creator and podcaster, which is the avenue I've obviously chosen to pursue for now. And I spent a really long time so worried about how I was going to choose between all of these options, or at least the ones that were actually viable for me, because some of these things are just like pipe dreams. I'm not a very good skateboarder, for example, but like it would be fun. Like it was a thought in my head, like I could get really good and then become a professional skateboarder. So I was worried up until I started this podcast, partly because I'm really lucky to feel like this is the path that, I don't know, I feel really cool to this path and it just feels really right for me. But I'm also aware that not everyone gets that luxury. But also because I just simply started one of my pathways and it was one that I never thought I would take, sure. But if we put it in terms of the metaphor from the bell jar, I ate something, I chose a fig and I ate it. I started a journey and maybe it won't end up being my career, but I'm now one step closer than I was when I was just deciding. And I've started the process of ruling things out, or trying things out, depending on how you want to put it. Now, part 2 is where we usually talk about the ways of overcoming the topic of the episode, but I think that this week is a little bit different because you can't really overcome this. I think for me at least, and I'm sure for many of you who feel this way, we'll never not mourn the things that we didn't do. Life has so much to offer, but we only have a certain amount of time to try and do all of it. So no matter how happy we are in our chosen path or paths, I think it's inevitable that we will still mourn the things that we didn't get to do. So apparently, on the page after the quote I spoke about earlier of the book, there is a less famous quote, and it goes, "I don't know what I ate, but I felt immensely better after the first mouthful. It occurred to me that my vision of the fig tree and all the fat figs that withered and fell to the earth might well have arisen from the profound void of an empty stomach." So basically, what she was saying was she was hungry. And I think that this is kind of a metaphor for how we all are hungry for success, fulfillment, happiness, enjoyment, or whatever else it is that's causing you to have so many desires. So maybe the way to go with this is, instead of trying to figure out which of the life paths we want to take, we just choose one and see how it goes. That way we aren't wasting any more time trying to make a decision, which, although we are of course thinking about it a lot, we are still neglecting our desires by thinking about them and not doing anything about any of them. I guess in a way that's kind of self-torture, so you might as well try one and stop doing that, you know? Sounds simple, but it doesn't matter which one, just choose one and go with it, see how it goes. And this leads me to my biggest piece of advice for dealing with this, which is to not put too much pressure on your career or life choices. And I know that sounds like a really difficult thing, because from a young age we're like, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to do? Like, what's your next plan? What's your path? If you haven't got a job, it's what's your next steps to getting a job? What's your plan? It's always what's your plan? What's your plan? What's your plan? How are you going to make money? Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't fucking matter. Happiness is what matters in life. If you're comfortable, great. If you've got loads of money, great. If you're poor, you can still be happy. But also, your decision doesn't have to be definite and terminal. If you decide you want to do one thing, for example, like a doctor, you don't have to do it forever just because you decided at one point in your life that that's what you want to do. And if you decide halfway through medical school, or during your first year of being a qualified doctor, or even 20 years after being a qualified doctor, that you don't want to be a doctor anymore, you don't have to. Even if you spent years of your life working towards this goal, you shouldn't put pressure on yourself to stay on a path that doesn't make you happy, even if it did cost you loads of time and money. It wasn't a waste of this time or money, because you wanted it at the time. And things change, we evolve and change, and we grow all the time. And so what we want isn't going to stay consistent throughout our lives either. We can't expect that of ourselves, because everything else about us changes. So why would we expect our desires and goals to stay the same as well? So we shouldn't put pressure on things that we feel like we should do. The beauty in life, I think anyway, is that we have the full autonomy to literally do whatever the fuck we want. There are no rules, there are no set paths we have to follow, and although depending on your situation and the people you're surrounded by, it might not feel like this next part is true, but we don't have to listen to anyone, be it a person, a societal expectation, or an internalized expectation even. If there is something or someone in your life that makes you feel like you have to follow a route or achieve a goal that you don't particularly want to, or maybe they're telling you to persist when you have decided that the path isn't for you, or maybe you're just worried about disappointing them, you're probably better off without that person or thing, no matter how hard that pill is to swallow. And I don't necessarily mean like cut them out. It doesn't have to be out of your life altogether, but you at least deserve to emotionally remove yourself from their opinions on your choices. You don't have to let their opinions control you and determine your actions so much. Which is obviously kind of hard depending on who you're dealing with here, but it's definitely worth a try, because you deserve to be happy and it deserve to experience fulfillment. And somebody stopping you from doing that is not acting in your best interest. Disappointing someone is not a big deal if doing the thing that will make them happy is going to make you feel unfulfilled and possibly regretful later in life. Also, some people, no matter how much they may seem like they're in your corner, just don't have your best interest at heart. Whether it's a parent telling you to do a job because it's good money, or a friend telling you to take a route that they're taking just so you can do it together. Even if it's coming from a good place, you shouldn't feel pressured by anybody to do anything that doesn't align with what you want and what will make you feel truly happy and fulfilled. The people that you surround yourself with can have such a big impact on your life choices without even being direct. People can affect your life choices just by the way they react to the news that you tell them, or how they speak about other people to you, and how they view themselves and speak about themselves. It's so important to surround yourself with truly supportive people who will have your back and encourage you to do whatever it is you're aiming to achieve, no matter how many times that might change. I have been through so many friends in my life, and I can say with almost 100% certainty that most of the people that I'm not friends with anymore would not have fully supported me on my podcast journey. They would have said they do, but they would have said things behind my back to my other friends, or make subtle comments that make me question my decision. I'm so lucky and so grateful now to be surrounded by people who genuinely support me and want me to do my thing, whatever it is. Like, they don't care what I'm doing as long as I'm happy. And whilst we're talking about it, I just want to shout out to my boyfriend, my younger brother, my oldest sister, and all of my friends, because they are such sick people in my life, and they are always so supportive of me, and they're always gassing me up as much as I do not need it. My ego is huge, But it's all because of you guys, and I freaking adore you. I'm so grateful. I'm so, so grateful. Love you. Moving on, I think that the first step to stop feeling so overwhelmed by this feeling of what to do is to figure out what your true core desires are. What things in life make you feel truly fulfilled and content and proud of yourself? You can figure this out through journaling. I think that's the best way. And there's, of course, the new segment of the podcast where I give you a bunch of journal prompts to help you through this journey. So stay tuned for that to hear what they are. Once you have figured out what your core desires are, I think the next step would be to assess your options and figure out what careers you can do that align with these values. For example, my core values are kindness, helpfulness, compassion, and learning. And with this, I deciphered some good careers for me would be working with animals in some capacity, like in a sanctuary or something, helping them in some way, I don't know, like research, conservation, whatever. Yoga instructing, or becoming a holistic healer of some kind and learning like Reiki or something and being a Reiki healer. Making documentaries about issues that I'm passionate about to help educate people on things like I deem important. And you can even just Google like what careers require compassion or what careers require... Oh, hello. Okay, what careers require like whatever your core value is or core values are. And you can create as long a list as you want with the career options. There is no limits. Like, sure, it might be a bit overwhelming having a long list, but step 3 is where we'll use this list of career options to figure out what will be best for you in terms of the lifestyle you want to live. So there's a bunch of journal prompts for this too, but for example, do you want to work from home? How many hours do you want to work a week? How much money do you want to make? Do you want to be doing a similar thing each day, or do you want to do different things each day? And using the answers to these questions, you'll be able to narrow down your list, and you'll probably have quite a short list of things that will fit both your lifestyle and your core values, which you can then either choose one or try them all out. Who knows? Also, I mentioned in part 1 of the podcast that I have a lot of things on my fig tree, and I've of course chosen, as I've mentioned many times before, and you are as aware because you're listening, I've chosen to pursue the podcasting route for now. And that might change in the future, but for now, it's making me happy, so I'm going to continue. However, that doesn't mean that I have to completely give up everything else on that list. So I actually disagree with the part of the quote that says, when you pick one, you lose all of the other options, because that's not necessarily true. As I mentioned before, I don't even have the skills for most of the things on my fig tree. Like, I can't skateboard very well, I only know the basics of playing the drums, I'm a beginner with yoga, but I still get fulfillment from them. And just because I might not be making a living from them, and I probably never will, it doesn't mean that they still don't make me happy. For example, I still crochet and I make art and videos for fun. I still do yoga without being an instructor. I'm planning on doing some animal conservation volunteering in the future. I practice the drums and I decorate my room and plan the decorations for my future homes to quench my interior designer urge. I read my books, and I read book reviews, and I do so many other things that relate to the things on my fig tree without them being my fig. Just because something isn't making you money in life, it doesn't mean that you can't still do it and still gain happiness and fulfillment from it. All we really want in life is to feel like it was worth something. And if you're fulfilled in life, you really can't get to your deathbed and think, oh, I wish I did this instead, because you were too happy with what you did do and did achieve and the ways that you did spend your time to worry about how a different route might have made you feel. And as we're on the topic, I just really want to express the gratitude that I feel for this path of podcasting. It really feels like everything in my life has led me here. And I'd also like to mention that in all my journaling of figure out what I wanted to do, I didn't end up with podcasting or content creation in this capacity at all. It was all very animal based or production based, like being a video editor or working on documentaries. Like, that was what I narrowed it down to. So I really believe that the universe will not allow us to see what will become the obvious until we're ready. Like, this path seems so obvious to me now that I've got it, but I never thought about it before. But I wasn't ready. I didn't have the confidence or the motivation or the patience to do anything before, let alone try and build social media pages and be consistent with a podcast, especially as it currently gets such a small amount of views. But I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so excited to see how this journey unfolds. That being said, although I am really happy doing this just for fun, I would of course love for it to reach more people so that it can maybe help more people and we can build a little supportive community, because that's the aim, isn't it? We just want to all help each other and we can all grow and learn together. So if you do enjoy my episodes, I would really love if you shared it with your friends, your family, your work colleagues, or literally whoever you think might enjoy it or might need it. I normally say this at the end of the episode, but it fits. So anyway, as I said, I'm going to keep doing it regardless, but I would just love it to have more of an impact. Like, that's the goal. So yeah, whatever. Anyway, on to part 3 after that accidental self-promo. We're going to now talk about the important things to remember and take away from this episode. Woohoo! Number 1 is that life isn't that serious. We all have our own theories on the reasons that we're here on this planet, but I have always believed that the meaning of life is to be happy, which sounds kind of cringe, whatever, but it's true. So focus on what makes you happy and you'll never regret making a decision. Because what is better than living a happy life? Having loads of money? You don't die with money. You die with happiness. Well, you don't die with anything. But still, my point stands. Happiness is better than money. Or literally anything else, in my opinion. Number 2 is that it is never too late to start again. I know of quite a few people now who, like, in their 40s and 50s and sometimes even 60s or older, have started again and just changed their career path or life path completely. There is nothing keeping you on a path that doesn't make you happy. Sure, like, depending on the job, it might be hard to get out of, but it is still possible, and you should always listen to your heart and follow what it says, because I really believe that listening to your heart is the key to fulfillment. Number 3 is you don't have to be serious about every choice you make. You can just dabble in some things, dip your toes in and see how the water feels. It doesn't all have to be so serious and money-making. You can still gain fulfillment from things without making money from them. And finally, number 4, making a choice, any choice, is better than trying to decide for a long time. As I said before, spending time deciding is pretty much self-torture, and it's wasting time that you could be using to test out your options and see how they make you feel, and you can always, always, always change your mind if you don't vibe with it anymore. And now for our new chapter, which is journal prompts. And this section is pretty long this week because I think that journaling is the best way to get to know yourself, and getting to know yourself is essential for figuring out what you want to do with your life. So I'm going to make all of these journal prompts and more, I'll give you extra ones as well, into little graphics and post them on my Instagram at Squares and Circles Pod. And I will have them all highlighted in a story so they're easy to find and you can go back and find them whenever you like. Right, I might get out of breath reading these out because I forget to breathe when I'm reading a list. So, what are my core values and how do I want them to be reflected in my career? What activities or tasks do I enjoy the most in my free time? What subjects or topics am I naturally curious about and want to learn more about? Talk about a time when you felt genuine joy. What were you doing and how can you implement more of that into your daily life? What have been my most fulfilling jobs or volunteer experiences? Why did I enjoy them? Reflect on a project or task that made me lose track of time. What was it and why did it engage me so much? What skills or talents have others consistently praised me for? If I could try any job for a day, what would it be and why? What's stopping me from trying it now? What careers have I considered in the past and what has drawn me to or away from them? Who are my career role models and what aspects of their careers inspire me? Where do I see myself in 5 years? What kind of work-life balance do I want? What lifestyle do I envision for myself and how does my career choice support that lifestyle? What impact do I want to have on the world or in my community through my career? What kind of work environment do I thrive in, e.g. collaborative, independent, structured, flexible? What are my non-negotiables in a job, e.g. location, salary, company culture, etc.? What steps can I take right now to explore potential careers, e.g. informational interviews, internships, further education? How can I test out my interests in low-risk ways, e.g. volunteering, part-time jobs, side projects? And finally, what additional skills or education might I need to pursue the career I'm interested in? And that concludes the episode. Thanks so much for listening this week. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to hang out with me and listen to me ramble on. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learnt something helpful. Let me know what you think either on Spotify or you can let me know over on my Instagram at Squares and Circles Pod. And if you want to see more about my life, I post on TikTok every day, so you can catch me there at Squares and Circles Podcast. Have a lovely week and good luck in your journal prompts this week. Love you all so much. I really hope you have a nice week. I already said that, but I mean it twice, so have a double nice week. Catch you in the next episode. Bye!